Your wife has a lovely neck. This is Rebooty and the Beast, a podcast in two parts. I'm N. Burke.
And I'm Matt Molinaro, and in the first episode, we review an original piece of media, and here we are, and then in the subsequent episodes, we'll discuss the reboots.
Yes, and this is, I feel like we often pick a movie where we're like, oh, we'll do this one and its reboot, and then as we look into it, there's like four reboots, and so this is a four-part Nosferatu series, as Matt told me before we started recording.
That's right. Nosferatu. Get it? Ignore the two at the end, because that just makes it confusing, you know?
Yeah.
If anything, you can make it like the Spanish two. Like, it's for you, you know?
Yes.
It's for
you. Oh man. So this we picked this because I've seen the newest one, the one that came out in theaters. I saw it on Christmas Day. And I was like, oh, I forgot that this was a reboot. I mean, I knew it was a reboot, but I was like, oh, that's perfect. Like, we can do the original and this one. And then once we decided on it and looked into it, it was like, oh, there's two more that we have to cover in between. So it's a Nosferatu series.
Yeah, let's have a little fun. Let's get into it. Let's a sharp turn from the world of Oz.
I mean, we could not have picked a more different movie from Wicked than 1922's Nosferatu.
Nosferatu, a symphony of horror. I didn't even know there was a reboot out until you said it was out in the theaters, and I was like, oh, this looks great. And then I have not seen it yet.
Okay.
We're actually thinking about going to see it later today for the first time.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I might end up seeing it before I see the 80s one, but we'll get there.
Okay.
I'm excited. Okay, so we'll talk about this movie. I'm assuming this was your first time seeing it.
Definitely, yeah. I think we talked about at the end of last episode that I don't recall. I'm sure I have, but I don't recall seeing a silent film before. So in my memory, this is like the first silent film I've sat down and watched from start to finish.
Yeah, I believe I've seen, and film people out there are gonna be like, you are so wrong. I think Metropolis is silent, and that is a movie I've definitely seen in like a film class. That was like a major movie, and I don't know if I've ever seen any others. Maybe shorts, like, you know, little Charlie Chaplin bits or whatever. But
yeah, that's true. Okay,
I didn't know what to expect out of this, and let's see, how long was it?
It was an hour and a half.
Appropriate. I mean, for that time, though, 1922, I don't know how long movies were at that time.
Yeah, and I'm curious, you know, if they had... The structure, of course, is like some things happen, you see a title card with some dialogue or, you know, interstitial stuff that kind of explains what happened or what the next scene is going to be. And so I'm curious, it probably wouldn't cut too much time out of the movie if those, because it's not like they were on screen for a very long time.
Yeah, I wonder I bet you back in the silent film era, I bet you movies were pretty long at some point because, you know, it was probably a real event to go to the theater.
Yeah.
I wonder. And then maybe, you know, we got more modern about it and then got to the appropriate length and then now we're outrageous again.
Ugh. My God. Wonder. Although I'm still not mad that Wicked was as long as it was because it was great.
Yeah, I'm just mad that I can't experience another half immediately afterwards.
The more I think about it, the more I think you're right about your theory of who like the Dorothy crew is, by the way.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's too obvious the things now that I've seen them. You know what I mean? I can't unsee.
For people who know the Wicked series, please don't spoil it for us until the new movie comes out.
Yeah, because I'm trying to stay away. Even though I have these theories and I'm pretty sure about some of them in some form, I still don't know how it's going to happen, and I really want to bury that lead.
Yeah. Well,
but with this movie...
Yeah.
So, fun piece of trivia about this movie that will be very important for how we review it.
Yes.
There are about 4,050 gajillion versions of this.
Versions. Yes.
The first version that we found together is, I believe, one of the more widely regarded versions as, like, the best original to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It has, like, original title cards, from what I can tell, the best original title cards they could have found for this. And it has, like, colorizing to some of the strips to make them look like darker or more dramatic and whatnot.
Yes.
And there was that version, which I started watching, and then I found a version on an app that I could watch better, I thought, better quality on Pluto.
Okay.
And it's the original version, again, it's still the 1922, but it is in black and white completely, no colorizing to it at all. And the title cards are different.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And have different names for each of the characters.
Yes. Yeah. There's, since they're silent films, the different versions seem to just pick different names and slightly different dialogue periodically.
Right. So the widely version, the version that we watched that we'll be talking about has like the main character, Count Orlok, Thomas Hutter, and Ellen Hutter are like your main trio here.
Yeah.
In the version I watched, I think Ellen's name was Nina. She's also Mina in some things. Thomas was some other Jonathan, I believe, and Count Orlok was Dracula or or Nosferatu interchangeably. And it was very confusing because we started watching it, and I'm taking my notes, and I'm looking at the top of my notes where I have the cast list, and I'm like, where the fuck is Ellen? Like, when is Ellen coming on the screen? And who's Nina? And I'm like, okay. And then I had to like go into a deep dive about what happened. And there's a great article out there. It says it's very easy to read. Maybe if you're a scholar, not for me. So,
okay.
Basically, it just seems like there was a big lawsuit because of the they tried to get away with basically ripping off Dracula. And the story of Count Dracula, and they thought they could just change the names and a few details and get away with it.
Yes.
And I think they did for a while until the wife of the author.
Yeah, Bram Stoker's wife sued them and won, and basically like all copies of the film were ordered to be destroyed, and so we almost didn't exist anymore at some point.
Which is kind of crazy because it's kind of an iconic piece of film history now.
Yeah.
So it's been retranslated in and out of like German and Swedish and from all these different places it was found, and then the title cards were thought to be destroyed and some were like sort of supposed upon, and it kind of like the game of telephone over time. Because then I went back and I had some extra time and I rewatched the version of Nosferatu, not the one that you watched, ironically.
Okay.
But another version that was colorized and had the original title cards. I made sure the title cards matched the ones you were watching too.
Okay.
So I've watched a third version of this that is Nosferatu in color, and it has the original title cards that you had. But
do you mean in color, or just like a lens of blue?
No. So like, remember in yours when it's nighttime, it's like a lens of blue?
Yes.
In this version, they just sort of like tinted the sky portion darker.
Oh, interesting.
And then it's still clearly like black and white, but someone has taken the time to like colorize little areas,
aspects,
little hues, which is kind of interesting. So, and that is for free on one of the apps on our TV too. I can't remember right now. Oh gosh, what was it I just watched it on? Anyhow, you could find it. It's just called like Nosferatu 1922 Symphony of Horror in Color, and so I'm on the right track. But every once in a while, my original notes have the old names, so I'm gonna count on you for a lot of that stuff.
The names, okay, all right, I can do that. Well, it was interesting because I saw Nosferatu, the new one, the 2024 one, which we'll cover in a couple episodes, but I saw it and I thought it was supposed to be like a really faithful adaptation of the Dracula novel, and like to an extent it is, but it's a much more faithful adaptation of this movie. And so if you've read the Dracula novel, which I read it like maybe 2 years ago.
Oh wow!
And so it's like
next question.
Relatively fresh in my mind, and so there's some diversions, of course, from the Dracula novel, but I don't know how they thought they were going to get away with this, because it is, other than like the ending, it is straight up the Dracula novel.
Okay, because I've not read the Dracula novel. I have eaten Count Chocula cereal. I have donned a pair of vampire teeth
fangs.
At some point.
Yeah.
I have the same knowledge that the basic pop culture person has of Dracula, like in all movies and crap forever. Universal horror movie Dracula.
Yeah.
I want to suck your blood, that guy. But I love I mean, all things like that kind of... if you listen to any of our other podcasts that we've had, you already know. This is right up my alley. So,
yeah.
I mean, disappearing into a cloud of bats, I think we've talked about that for so many different reasons.
Dream. I wish I could do that so bad.
Do you want the little summary from IMDb?
Yes, please.
Okay,
I think I read it, but I definitely want to hear it on the episode.
All right, so Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, 1922. Vampire Count Orlok expresses interest in a new residence and real estate agent Hutter's wife.
Okay.
Very vague.
It's very vague, and it sounds more like a romance than a horror movie.
It sounds like we're going to watch The Room.
Oh my god. Oh, The Room. I was kind of... So another thing is, since a lot of the copies of this movie were destroyed, the original score, like the true original score for the movie, is lost. Like parts of it still exist and have been kind of like recreated. Mm-hmm. But there's almost as many like different music accompaniments for this as there are different like visual versions. And so I don't know what your experience was with the music, but the version that I watched had some pretty dramatic and wild music choices at different points.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a lot of yes, a lot of classical music, sometimes very loud. Very loud.
Yes.
Like, stop it. And then sometimes it was just like just enough there where I was like, oh, did I hit mute? It was a journey. And listen, this is maybe a stupid question. When they did silent films back in the day, was there a reel of music playing something somehow, or was there a band scoring?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. I think sometimes both. I mean, not sometimes both, but I think both existed.
Yeah, maybe like a score and then like a percussion section doing sound effects and stuff. I wonder.
Maybe, yeah.
Because I bet the effect is different.
Yeah.
Because it didn't feel like this is where you got to give respect to people in the film industry that score things and do the music in the background really well. Because I mean, we were just running wild. Sometimes a song would just play start to finish, and many scenes have gone on that have nothing to do with the original tone of the original score.
Yeah. Well, shall we actually start talking about the movie now?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
Okay. Well, what I kind of loved was the movie was divided up into different acts. Mm-hmm. Was it 4 or 5? I forget.
I think it was 4.
It was 5. No, it was 5. I made a note. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Do you like how I asked you and then immediately negged you when you gave me the answer?
Yes, it's like that scene in Arrested Development when she goes, "Here you go, Buster. Here's a candy bar. Are you hungry?" And he goes to reach for it, and Jessica Walters goes, "No, you can't have it. I'm withholding. Look at me. Getting off."
Oh, God. Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
Well, the title card is... it explains that this is, Nosferatu, the Symphony of Horrors. The Act 1 opens in 1838. Okay, here's where we're gonna... I think my best guess, not speaking German, because this was made in Germany, it's a German film. Mm-hmm. I think that the city is pronounced Viborg, even though it's spelled... I think so, even though it's spelled Wisborg.
Okay.
It's a fictional city made up for the movie, but I'm going to say Viborg, 1838, and it's the Chronicle of the Great Death. And it opens with a fun quote, which said, or title card that said, "Nosferatu, does not this word sound like the call of the death bird at midnight? Take care you never utter it, lest life's pictures fade into pale shadows and ghostly dreams rise from your heart and feed on your blood."
Ooh, I mean...
Fun.
There you go. I mean, they don't bury the lead at all.
No.
Like, if anyone was going to see this movie, there was no surprise. This is a vampire. No. Like,
well,
here we go.
I know you just said you haven't read Dracula, but one of my favorite things about the Dracula novel is that it's written in what's called epistolary format. And it's... Did you just say ew or ooh?
I went, ooh.
Ooh. So it's not just like first or third person. The entire novel is diary entries and newspaper clippings. So you like hear the entire story through different people's diary entries and like news articles and things like that. It's really
like the original
cool.
found footage.
Yes, yeah. It's the inspiration for the original Blair Witch.
LOL. I love that. I mean, this is technically, which I did not get this at first. This was very confusing for me. The original title cards with the story of the city and Nosferatu and all that. I was like, and then we met the main characters. I was like, wait, where did the original person go? And I realized, oh, this is being narrated from someone's account
diary
of how this happened.
Exactly.
Which
yeah.
I did
so they
not
took
get at first.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because sometimes it's just like title cards explaining what the scene is doing, and then other kind of moments are clearly somebody's like diary entry, and it seems unclear who is that diary narrator at times. But yeah, in the original novel, you get kind of journal entries from several different people.
And according to IMDb, this is the diary of Johann Cavalius.
Who is not a character in the movie?
No.
Oh, all right.
It's just like one of the whoever's writing the diary at the beginning who's saying how the plague was brought to his town or whatever.
Okay.
Who's telling the story about Hutter and Ellen.
Ellen, yeah.
Is this person's name is Johann. And I was like, when is Johann coming out? And then I started to get confused. Is this another name change?
So in the book, Mina Harker is the wife, and so it's just really funny to me that one of the versions tried to get away with calling her Nina.
Oh yeah, the new versions have just straight up gone back to the original names.
Yeah, I think because it's entered public domain now, so I think that they can do that now. I say that like I'm some legal expert on public domain, but anyway.
No, I've read something like that too.
Okay. So Hutter and his wife Ellen are like getting ready for the day, and I'm gonna not bury the lead. I'm gonna spoil the ending. I loved this movie. I loved watching it. Some of my comments may be a little bit snarky because
oh, same. Come on. I understand this is a time, but
it's kind of amazing how you didn't used to have to be like beautiful to be in movies. Like these people are not bad looking, but they're not like
they're ordinary.
They're ordinary, and I kind of love that.
Yes.
Like they're not like Angelina Jolie, and it's kind of nice to be like, oh, these are people who just wanted to act, and it wasn't about them being picture perfect, beautiful people. They were just average people, and I kind of like that a lot.
Because they weren't becoming movie stars. Movie stars wasn't a thing yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
Probably became one very quickly after this, but I don't think the main intention was like, I'm going to be famous now.
Right.
It was like, I'm going to make a buck.
Yeah, and I'm going to do something I like doing.
Yeah. And I also, and we have to talk about this. So they're getting ready for the day, which includes like him picking flowers and bringing them to her.
Yes.
And then in my version, she's like, oh my God, why did you kill them?
Yes.
I mean, I guess I'm getting the themes, okay? I'm getting it.
Yeah, she in the novel, she is it's a little hard to explain, but she's a little bit like melancholic and like has a thing about death, which kind of makes sense because she has this sort of connection to Nosferatu or Count Dracula in the book.
Lydia Dietz.
A little Lydia Dietz, and a little bit like, these flowers that were growing beautifully, you've now ended their life to bring them to me, kind of thing. So she's kind of a melancholy character.
So right away, she's a great time, and we know that. And then I get it. We're emotionally acting. We're doing all the hand things, and all. We can't speak.
Yes,
but the way she cradles those flowers, it is like she's holding an infant. Yeah,
that didn't stand out so much to me as Hutter, the husband.
Oh my God,
his absolutely manic grins that he throws around left, right, and center that seem very discordant with the tone of the scene.
Oh my gosh, he's at a 10.
He is at a 10 at all times, and I haven't watched a lot of silent films, so I'd be really curious to see others. Like I imagine that it was a stylistic thing of like, you really have to sell the emotions at a 10 to make it clear to the audience like what's going on.
Well, boom.
Yeah, boom clap. He knocked it out of the park with that. Okay, so he works for a real estate agent named Knock, who, according to the title card, is the subject of many rumors, who we cut to knock, and my note says he is cackling while reading a page from the Book of Shadows.
The language on that page.
It's apparently an actual language called like Enochian or something like that from like 16th century that I don't think is used anymore.
I did read something like that, like the angel tongue or something.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, angel tongue.
Okay. Welcome to the stage, Angel Tongue. But his, number one, I have to say, his acting is truly wild. And his eyebrows are about 6 inches off of his face.
Oh my god, he's like the infomercial guy who used to do the juicer. He's the juice man.
I just want to know if those were his real eyebrows or if they were like prosthetic eyebrows or not, because they
get wilder as his acting continues. There's a weird storyline. His is the only storyline I don't completely understand. Like, I get he's this real estate broker up back in the day. He's like selling Sunset, but in this town. And I get that I didn't realize this whole thing was going to be about a real estate deal, a really strange one, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah, that's what the novel is about, too.
Very high stakes. I mean,
yes.
He basically tells, not Jonathan, he tells, what's his name in this?
Hutter.
He tells him, like, you got, Count Orlok in Transylvania, really wants to move here, or really is interested in an estate and has the money for it, and like, I recommend the house across the street from yours.
That's the funniest part to me is that he's gonna be your neighbor, and it's kind of this abandoned home across the street from theirs, and he tells him that it's gonna cost him to get the deal done. It's gonna cost him a bit of sweat, effort, and perhaps a little bit of blood. And he agrees to do this deal, and they have a joint cackling moment.
Yes, it's very strange. I can't tell what the relation... I thought this was going to be like a mean boss, but he seems to be delighted at the prospect of this.
In the novel, he is much more apprehensive. Like, he's very concerned about this and doesn't want to leave his wife, Ellen. Mm-hmm. And so he goes and tells his wife that he must journey to the land of thieves and ghosts, which is, I don't remember them talking about Transylvania quite like that in the novel, but I do remember it was intended to be sort of this like scary, otherworldly sort of place.
Yeah, in the version I watched first, they called it the Land of Phantoms, which is the only thing I prefer from that one.
Yeah, I agree. That makes much more sense to me. She, of course, doesn't want him to go, and so he entrusts his, according to the title card, anxious wife to the care of his friends. And I missed it, and I didn't rewind. I don't know why, but he is a rich ship owner. Is the friend's occupation?
I think so. I don't know why it mattered, but yeah, it's just his friends that she's going to stay with, this friend couple. I love how she's like, oh, you're going to leave for months and go to this place called the Land of Phantoms and do all of this for a business deal? And she's like, I don't want you to go. She's really upset. And he's like, bye. And like laughs and like jumps and does like a Dick Van Dyke heel click on his way out. Yes,
100%. Yeah. I know that the choice for his characterization is so different from the novel. It's very strange to me.
Well, he's out of there. I mean, she's not a great time for him. They're not a good match.
No, yeah.
The energy is not right in that relationship.
It's very mismatched, but they make more sense in the novel and probably subsequent adaptations. I would love to talk to the filmmaker about why he directed him that way. Like, I really want to know the intent behind that. But did you know, by the way, that the director for this was gay?
No.
Yeah, he was a gay man. That I'm not sure of, but...
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so go us.
That explains some of the theatrics.
Everything the gays do is so dramatic and flamboyant, it makes me want to light myself on fire.
We're just going to keep referencing her.
Arrested Development today. Who would have thought that would have shown up twice in Nosferatu?
We'll see how many more.
Yeah. So he travels to the Carpathian Mountains, and my version, which you mentioned is kind of the, I think, standard, is the film, which is in kind of a general sort of warm yellow tone for most of the black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It has like a blue tint to it for a lot of these scenes in Transylvania and the nighttime scenes.
Way
and
better.
I was like, I thought that was really cool. I don't know when that was done, but if that was something that was like done upon theatrical release, I thought that was kind of a cool, clever way to like change the tone of the movie.
Oh, 100%. Because let me tell you something. When I watched the first version I watched up to this point was the fully black and white version. And until someone said it's almost midnight, I was like, oh, because they fully shot this in the day. Because of course they didn't have the editing, to make it possible to shoot at night. But
yeah,
it's so obviously not at all changed at all. Like, I was like, oh, it's dark here. And then when I went and watched, like, fast forwarded through the version you watched and saw the dark scenes, I was like, oh, that is so much better.
Okay, yeah. He stops at an inn in this little village at the bottom of the Carpathian Mountains.
I mean,
yes, do you want to say something?
Talk about what you said at the beginning of this movie. About the folks who are cast in movies being everyday folks.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I mean, this is like a scene out of Deliverance.
It is kind of, yes. Although they're in sort of like, in my mind, sort of like Eastern European not costumes, but clothing with kind of like big billowing sleeves and lots of embroidery. The clothing is pretty cool on these folks in this scene.
Yeah, I just couldn't place where they were, besides a place where hairbrushes and scissors do not exist.
I will say there's some wild facial hair and hair in this movie, and I'm going to mention it when I see it.
I think you're going to see it very soon.
Yeah. So he gets there, and they're like very nice to him. They like bring him in, whatever. And he immediately like pounds on the table, and the title card for me said, "Hurry my dinner, or I must go to Count Orlok's castle." Which, number one, rude. Who orders dinner that way? But the villagers are shook that he is mentioning Count Orlok's castle.
Yes. Beyond visibly shook. They're like actually shaking.
Yes. And this is one of my favorite moments in the movie, because they say, "You cannot travel now. The werewolf roams the forest," which in the novel, they know that like Orlok, or Dracula in the novel, he's Dracula, is this kind of like scary spectral like monster, but they don't know really what he is. And so I do think in the novel they kind of like refer to like this wolf or some sort of creature killing people in the woods kind of thing. And so that kind of made sense to me, even though I was like, oh wait, this isn't a werewolf movie, but I do remember them talking about some kind of like creature killing people in the forests in the novel.
Yeah,
but
I don't remember exactly. I didn't remember seeing about specifically a werewolf. I just thought they were talking about dangers in the woods, because then they show the werewolf.
Which is the part that I loved so much. It is just a hyena.
I was like, at first I was like, what is that? Because I didn't see even the thing about the werewolf. So I was like, oh, this must be one of the dangers in the forest. I'm seeing this animal on the screen that I'm expecting to be like a foreground shot before they show some kind of ghostly thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is the danger. It's literally like a shot at a National Geographic about just a hyena walking around.
A hyena.
Walking around.
I don't think existed in Eastern Europe.
Well, it's a werewolf.
I mean, maybe, yeah.
In this movie.
It's a werewolf.
It's certainly not a hyena.
But it just killed me. I was like, oh, and it was one of those things where I was like, I kind of tried to, like roll my memory back and was like, I wonder how much knowledge of like animals from different regions of the world people might have had in 1922, because it's not like there was the internet. And so it's like, well, if there weren't hyenas at the zoo and you hadn't read about them, maybe it seemed much more like unfamiliar.
It does have like a stripy little pattern on it that makes it look a little not hyena-ish, and it looks like one of those like a liger almost, like a species of a hyena that if you don't like, I looked at it, I was like, what the heck kind of animal is that at first? Yeah, it took me a minute to get hyena out of it even myself. So yeah, I think The Lion King.
And then another part that I love is he is like settling down in his room for the night because he's staying at the inn, and there's a book on his side table titled Vampires, well, according to my title card, Vampires, Terrible Phantoms, Magic, and the Seven Deadly Sins. And my note to myself was like, I mean, I guess it's a step up from the Bible in the nightstand that you usually get in hotels. Like, I would be much more interested in reading that book.
Oh, 100%. I say replace. Let's do a little replace. Copy and replace. I think my version said the Book of Vampires at first.
Okay.
Which is very charmed. And I was like, okay, so here, we found the Grimoire. But it's so okay. So in your version, I think is much more specific, much more accurate to what it actually is. Here's what I'm going to say right now about how all of this could be avoided. And here we go. The book is, from what we see, about 12 pages. Okay, from the pages that we read, and he reads it like a page at a time over like the whole movie.
Yes, yeah. And well, it's funny because he like looks at it, sees a little bit, reads a page that basically explains that Nosferatu came from the demon. I think I'm gonna say it wrong, but Belial.
Belial. I want to say Belial.
Okay. Billie Eilish. And so he's like the offspring of one of the demons or fallen angels or whatever from the Bible. And he immediately is like, okay, whatever, and literally tosses the book on the ground, laughing at it, and gets in bed.
Right. And when you read the whole book, when we get there, just read the book. You could have read the book in the first day.
Yeah.
It will save your life. And it's very short, and you don't have anything else to do. There's no TV in that room. You don't have HBO.
No.
You don't have your phone to doom scroll in bed. You're not even writing a letter.
No.
Read the damn book.
Read the book.
It's basically a pamphlet.
I mean, and he like laughs at it and throws it on the ground, but then later he has it with him. So he clearly took it, which I'm like, you're stealing from the inn, but okay.
He's nuts.
Yeah. He gets ready the next day by dunking his head into a bucket of water, which looks really unpleasant to me.
Oh my god. Thank you for mentioning that, because I wrote the way they bathe.
And the next day they take him up to the castle. We get a title card that says, "Make haste, the sun is setting." The drivers refuse to go further because they say unnatural deeds occur beyond the past. So he goes on foot for a while. And then eventually another carriage comes for him, which this is all pretty accurate to the novel. And the driver does look like Nosferatu, but is all kind of wrapped up. And I don't know, in the version you watched, at this point, the music is truly bonkers and is like wild, high-pitched flute noises.
Yes.
That kind of like evokes like Night on Bald Mountain sort of like, or tries to, vibes. Did your film switch to negative exposure for some of this?
No.
Okay, mine did. I think like it looked like they were trying to create this kind of like spooky, like he's now in the hands of death kind of vibe by switching the exposure. Is what it looked like to me. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it looked like negative exposure to me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I'll have to look back at that part. In this part, it was just colorized differently. There was like a red. They tinted the sky red, like a blood red.
Yes. Interesting. I have another question for you just about your experience watching this. As I was taking my notes, my phone kept trying to change Orlock into either or space lock or airlock. So Captain Airlock, or not Captain Airlock, Count Airlock.
Well, I kept writing Dracula, so I didn't have that problem much of the time.
All right, there you go. We get to see Count Orlok for the first time, which is funny. When I read the kind of like trivia and stuff about the movie later, he's not in that much of the movie.
No.
Like he doesn't appear for a good chunk of the first part, and then his screen time is like relatively small for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's a lot of reactions to him, if anything.
Yeah, which is there was some other movie where that happened where we were like,
oh, Beetlejuice, the first one.
Yeah, Beetlejuice. He appears only for like 3 solid
7
minutes
minutes
of the film or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Amy Poehler in Mean Girls.
Oh my god, yes. I really liked his like the sort of like skinny but like humpbacked vibe and the way his collar went all the way up to like the bottom of his head.
Oh, he was creepy. He was good.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
But you know what? Knock, or whatever his name is, was creepy as hell, too. In almost the same way, in many ways. I don't know what they're trying to imply with Knock, because I don't know if this is even important, but there's multiple scenes of him, like, in a cell trying to climb to a window, and I'm like, what happened to you?
In the novel, Dracula's sort of menace is almost the sort of like mental emotional hold he has over people, and Knock is essentially kind of like one of his like more controlled minions. And so he like facilitated a lot of Dracula being able to come to, in the novel, England, but in this movie, like Viborg, Germany. So he kind of like signed a contract with Dracula and like is sort of mind controlled by him, and sent Hutter, or in the book I think it's Jonathan Harker, into the mountains to like sign the contract and get him on a ship to England. So he's kind of like his right-hand man, sort of in the book.
In the movie, does it explain where he is in that cell or why? Or did I miss that?
He's in the cell because he was arrested for like acting erratically, which does happen in the book as well. And so he's sort of in like an institution where that doctor is like looking over him, and then as we see in the movie, he like escapes and all of that. But it's a little strange in the movie. Like they don't have enough time to dig into his character, so it's almost like after he facilitated Hutter going, they could have just left him out of the movie, I feel like, because he didn't really do much.
I agree. So one thing I did like that we missed, but we did talk about it, was the carriage that takes him in to the castle. I did like that the horses were all in like little cloaks too.
Yeah, they had like little masks and stuff on them.
Yeah, they looked like they were like covered in fabric, basically. I was like, okay, even you were covered in fabric. I mean, they're not vampires, but
yeah,
I loved it. Anyway, it was very effective. And they did like a fast motion for that carriage coming up. That was very creepy with that bonkers ass music.
The music. Honestly, listeners, if you have not seen this and you don't intend to see it, number one, you should, because I think it's great. But number two, just go watch this scene to listen to the music, because it's not like nothing I've ever heard in my life.
I can't wait till you talk about this next scene, because I was...
Is this the beginning of Act 2 when they're...
having bread?
When he's like having bread, yes.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone out there, have you seen the video of what's her name cutting the cucumber? The Kardashian or the Jenner cutting the cucumber for the first time on camera?
No.
Oh my god! And I wish I would knew which girl it was from that group. But there's a video of her trying to like make herself a sandwich. It might be Kim making a sandwich for herself on one of those Kardashian shows, and she's cutting her cucumber, and you can tell she's never ever held a knife and cut a vegetable in her life. And it becomes like the focus of the scene. They're like, you need to stop. You're going to hurt yourself. Watch that scene. You have to. But him with the bread, from the moment he's cutting the bread, they're at midnight, basically, after midnight, demanding food. I'm like, you are cutting the bread towards yourself with the knife. What are you doing? He's like holding the bread in his hand and like basically cutting with a big ass knife in the 20s towards his hand. He's going to get a staph infection.
Yeah. Also, it's 1838.
Oh, listen. It's a long time ago.
But yeah, he gets spooked by Count Orlok while he's like the skeleton clock chimes as he's like cutting the bread, and he ends up cutting his thumb, and Orlok like flips out and is like, the title card says, "You've hurt yourself, the precious blood," and we get a very, very long scene of him backing away from Orlok.
Yes.
Like really, really long.
Wide-eyed.
Oh, by the way, I read something that for the filming, that the director, while they were filming, they like paced some of the scenes using a metronome. And I feel like you can sort of see that in this, because they like takes really measured steps back, like to the beat of a metronome. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, Count Orlok is like, why don't you sit by the fire and stay a while? And he kind of like loses consciousness and it goes black. And then the sun wakes up and the title card says, as the sun rose, Hutter too was freed from the shadows of the night. But he's like in the same chair that he was kind of like backed into by Orlok, but he's alone. And he like pulls out a mirror and sees like bite marks on his neck, but is like hum-de-dum, and then just proceeds to like eat the food that's laid out on the table for him, which in the novel, the like sort of, this is all kind of accurate to the novel, but it's slower it's a lot slower in the novel of like the creepiness and like his sort of like general sense of unease grows more and more over time. But obviously they can't really spend a lot of time doing that.
This is preposterous.
In a movie.
And this is getting preposterous. He is in...
It's getting okay,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
Yeah, you're right. It is beyond, LaShawn beyond. And this man is in a house with a man named Count Orlok, okay? Who lives in a place that people call the land of dark shadows and phantoms. He was escorted here by people who were afraid of him by a covered phantom carriage with horses covered in black.
Yes.
And a scary man who now he read the damn book about the vampire. And he's still got it on him, which will give him the whole rest of the story. And now he has a bite on his neck. 2 bite marks on his neck the next morning after the person said, "Your precious blood." And he looked like that. Yeah. And he's like, must have been a mosquito.
Yes. So he writes a letter to his wife about how like the mosquitoes are so virulent out here. And like, I've got 2 bite marks on my neck, like just one practically on top of the other. And he says he's having gloomy dreams and all of that.
God.
And
what
then,
a fool.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
What a fool.
A man on horseback rides up and he gives him the letter to his wife Ellen, and the guy rides off, and a title card says, "At night the ghostly shadows seem revived." And he and Orlok are like going over some paperwork, and he pulls something out of his bag, but a photo of his wife falls out of the sack, and Orlok sees it and grabs it and says, "Your wife has a lovely neck." And he says he's buying the house opposite the Hutters, which I'm sure Hutter is like,
great.
Oh, good.
Can't wait for you to live across the street from me. But
I can't wait to come borrow a cup of sugar with my wife with a lovely neck.
Will come over.
Yeah. But this is when he like starts to, I think, kind of like be like, honestly, I know it's slow that he's like starting to feel it. But at this point is when he's like
uneasy. Something
isn't right. And so he reads some more of the book and reads something about like the vampire feeding on blood at night. And it says, "Beware that his shadow weigheth not upon you like a terrible nightmare." And yeah, fun. But this is when his like bedroom door opens and Orlok kind of like sort of floats in and looking super creepy and bald and amazing. And Hutter like tries to escape, sees that his like window opens onto like a river below him, and when Orlok walks in, he hides under the sheets, which I just think is so funny. It's such a little kid thing.
Yeah.
And we cut from this to a title card that says "at the same hour," and Ellen wakes up from sleep and walks to the window and starts like walking around on the banisters. And this is again very true to the novel. Like she has like sort of like fits as she's sleeping, being sort of like mind influenced by Dracula. And I just wanted to point out one thing in the scene is like the ship owner man. He is smoking the wildest pipe I've ever seen in my life. It looks like a trombone or a bassoon or something that is like a smoking pipe. It literally is like 4 feet long and like curves around back on itself. It's the coolest looking thing I've ever seen.
It's the horn of a ear.
Yes. He sees her sleepwalking. She faints. They call for a doctor.
She faints a lot.
There's a lot of fainting in this movie for her.
Someone needs to get her one of those fainting chairs.
Yes. I will say there's some really cool, and I think this is kind of like one of the things that they talk a lot about in how this movie inspired horror movies, is there's a lot of good shadow work in this movie. Because you see like Orlok's shadowy fingers like crawling for like kind of like clawing over Hutter before he reaches for him.
Yeah, I love that. It's very like It reminds me of like what you'll see later in like early Hitchcock and those types of
Yeah.
movies, you know?
Yeah, totally. Anyway, Orlok feeds on him. Ellen faints. The doctor says she just has harmless congestion of the blood. And then Hutter kind of wakes up the next morning and realizes something is really wrong. And he like runs around the castle searching and finds a crypt with a coffin in it. Inside it is Orlok. And he panics and runs away. And then at that night, he sees Orlok loading up, which I didn't realize what they were at first, but they're like coffins full of earth.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? Is this just a bunch of... What is this? What is this, Property Brothers? Are you building a gazebo? What are you building? So, very quickly.
In the novel,
very strong.
Yes. In the novel, he has to sleep in the earth in which he was buried in order to like stay alive. And so part of the whole like novel is him like getting that soil over to England. And so that's what this is supposed to be. It's like the cartons of the soil that he was buried in.
Two things I have to say about this.
Yes.
One, in my version of the movie, when Ellen wakes up.
Yes.
And almost sleepwalks to her death. It says that she's having I'm going to really try to pronounce this word because I've never seen it in my life. A somnambulistic dream.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, have you heard that word in your life?
I have, yes. I could not tell you what it means, but like som is a prefix for like sleep.
Okay, let me tell you something. If this was on a title card and I'm in 1922 going to the movies.
Oh, somnambulism is sleepwalking.
Just say sleepwalking. Just say. Oh, this is jujube. Just
say talk.
Just say talk. Oh my gosh, that was one thing. I had to like pause for a second. I was like, I'm not even looking that up because I just saw her almost walk to her death. I get the point, but that's expecting a lot for me as a viewer.
Yeah.
The other thing I wrote at this point is when he finds him in the coffin in the basement and he sees them building the coffins of dirt outside. I wrote, how good is the commission on the sale of this house?
Yeah.
Do you need
at this point? I do not want this man as my neighbor.
Go home. Go home and take the loss.
Yeah. So that's the end of Act 2. Act 3 is like Hutter is recovering. He escapes from the castle. He's like recovering in like a church hospital. A diary entry says that Nosferatu is on his way. He's on a ship called the Empusa in my novel, or in my version. And this is where I will say I think the novel is so cool. Is in the novel you get like news articles and diary entries from the ship's captain where he's talking about how like people are falling ill or going mad and like gradually like one by one everybody on the ship is dying or disappearing. And so you really get that kind of like buildup of suspense of like things are not okay as it's like approaching England in the novel. Yeah. And they couldn't really do that super well in a movie, but it's pretty cool. Like you see like the crew
journal
like
entries.
You see like the little bit of journal entries later on of like how that happened. But anyway, he's on a boat. He's bound for Viborg in the movie. We get to introduce to a character named Professor Bulwer, who is Paracelsian. I didn't know what that word meant. So anyway,
I don't know who that is either. Is this the person talking about the carnivorous plant?
Yes.
In my version?
Yes.
It's Van Helsing.
So Van Helsing was the original character's name.
LOL. Which I was like, oh, okay, I know Van Helsing.
Yes.
And so I was like, wow, they're really just bringing Van Helsing in. This was also before I read like why everyone was named what they were named in this. So yeah, that's why I was like, I can't help you with what you're saying.
Yeah. He has a much bigger role in the novel and is kind of like this man of science, but also like brings in a belief in the supernatural. And so he's kind of able to like bridge the gap between like what's happening to people and Dracula in the novel. But yeah, we get like weird scenes with him like teaching his students about Venus flytraps, and my title card says like, oh, like a vampire, is it not?
Yeah, same.
Okay. Meanwhile, Knock, the real estate agent, has gone mad. He's been arrested. He's eating bugs and saying blood is life.
What's wrong with that?
I mean, come on. He's just trying to get protein. Okay, I want to talk about this. So, meanwhile, Ellen has been lamenting at the beach. She's living my dream life. She is like Wells for Boys, just sitting at the beach, staring into the ocean.
I wrote down Ellen alone, hanging out among the dunes is one major yikes. Like,
I want to know,
stay
though,
away from that scene.
Like, she's hanging out at the beach, but there's like a million weird crosses at the beach that don't look like gravestones. They look like they're made of like paper almost.
It was a weird scene. I was like, if I came upon this on the beach, I'm turning right around.
100%. That's like Blair Witch vibes. It was really, I want to understand what that was supposed to be, because
it was like
didn't.
La Llorona.
Yeah, it was like, is this a beach graveyard? What's going on here?
Yes.
She finally gets the letter from Hutter saying he's like doing well and doing fine or whatever, which I think she kind of like senses through her psychic connection to Orlok that he's not. But anyway, she gets the letter. Knock attacks the janitor in the prison and escapes. Cackles.
There's Nosferatu, or not Nosferatu, because I guess that's just a word for vampire, but Count Orlok they keep showing him hiding in the shadows on the boat.
Yes.
Under little shadows and little crooks and little corners. And now there's, I think, scenes when they like open up is this when they open up the coffins and there's like mice?
Yes, because in this movie, they kind of like equate like him coming to like the plague. But in the novel, it's more about like the sort of like people are like there are bites appearing on their necks and there's like sort of like an ill vibe about, but it's not the actual plague, I don't think. But in this movie, it is supposed to be like rats carrying the plague kind of thing. The captain of the boat, I have to point out, his beard is the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my god.
It looked like if Wolverine had never met a pair of hair trimmers before.
I'm telling you, what is going on in this movie? Yes.
I did like how they had Orlok kind of like transparent in like when people were looking. I was like, that's cool. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure how they accomplished that. They must have like overlaid
one roll
him.
of film over the other.
Yeah. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that too.
Anyway, Captain's alone. Nosferatu finally kills the captain as he's like prowling around the ship because he's killed everyone else. And we get a title card that says the ship of death had a new captain.
Ooh, okay, below deck.
I know. That's the end of Act 3. Act 4. Hutter and the ship both make it back to Viborg around the same time. Ellen is sleepwalking and she like senses Orlok coming and she says, I must go to him. He is coming.
She's having
this is where,
woman.
Yeah. Knock attacks the guard and escapes here. Okay, then we get some very strange footage that Orlok kind of like leaves the ship. He carries all his coffins of soil to his new home, but it's kind of like a lot of weird footage of him just like walking around town carrying a big coffin. And I'm like, where is everybody? This seems like really conspicuous.
It felt like, he's just kind of walking. No one sees him. He's literally walking around carrying a coffin that he should not be able to carry because he's a human being by himself.
Yes.
Well, he's a vampire, but you know what I mean? No one's looking at him at all. And I just thought, this is happening for so long. I felt like this was a music video. Like, it could have been like one of those, I just went to college and lost my parents. I'm away from my parents for the first time montages. They could have played some soft music, some sullen, like... They could have played Vanessa Carlton, Making My Way Downtown,
oh my God. Honestly, for this. Making My Way Downtown. That would have been really funny. Anyway, all that really happens in Act 4 is the rats escape the ship and they think the plague is coming, and the doctors order everyone to go home and bolt their doors a window, and a drummer goes through the city announcing the same thing.
And Nosferatu walks through a wall.
And Nosferatu walks through a wall, yes. Which was kind of cool.
I like that part.
And then we get Act 5. This is where Ellen finally finds the book about vampires, and she reads a passage that says, "No other deliverance is possible but that an innocent maiden maketh the vampire heed not the first crow of the cock in giving willingly of her blood." And so she kind of like realizes that this is the only way to get rid of Count Orlok. It's kind of interesting. There's a moment where she points to the house across the street and says, "This is what I see every night." And it's just the house across the street. And I was like, well, that's what's out your window.
Right. I was like, yeah. Yeah, girl. She's not a good communicator. They don't give this character... Well, listen. They shit all over this character.
Yeah.
She is both the reason this is happening somehow and also responsible for fixing it. And... She's also completely unhinged through the whole movie.
Yes.
And why are they putting crosses on the door?
I wasn't sure about that either. I was confused if that was like indicating that they were following protocol and staying locked up and not leaving. Maybe, and it was like
Davey was like, maybe people are dead in those houses already.
I wondered that too. It wasn't quite clear.
Yeah, it was very strange. It was unusual. The town's living in terror, and I thought like. Wait, sorry. Oh, yeah. I was like, I don't understand why this is... It seems like this huge epidemic is happening, but it seems like she's not really reacting in any normal way to what's happening. She's reading a book where she has to say, I have to stay up till the cock crows with a vampire and just seduce him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sure. Why not? Like, it just... There's no... The other guy reacts at a 10 to everything, and she's either... completely sullen or fainting. Yeah I like the old-fashioned street light.
I love the old-fashioned street light.
I always wondered how they must have done things like that back in the day. I love seeing little details of that.
Yeah, that was really cool seeing it light.
Be like pulled up by like a pulley.
Yes. The villagers chase Knock because they're convinced that he's the one that's causing all of this somehow. And they throw rocks at him. We get, as they're chasing Knock and throwing rocks at him, we get a little scene of Ellen's like embroidering a blanket that says "I love you."
I wrote Ellen's embroidering some ugly shit.
It was a goodbye blanket. Okay, so this is where we get kind of like the concluding scene where it's nighttime and Ellen awakens and sees Orlok across the street and his like clawed hands summon to her. But she like, Hutter, her husband, is like asleep in the chair and she pretends to faint and says like, "Fetch Dr. Bulwer." And then, the minute he leaves, Orlok comes over. And again, they do some really cool shadow work where like his vampire claws like crawling up her like shift dress, and then like it reaches her heart and like tightens on her heart, and she like faints, and Orlok starts feeding on her. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I love the shadow stuff. And like even him like approaching, there's like a lot of like little shadows of him up the steps and stuff.
Yeah, really cool. Orlok feeds on her. The village people capture Knock.
A cock crows.
And a cock crows, and Orlok dies as... and this is... Did you know, I read this in the trivia, that this is where the origin of vampires dying in sunlight came from. Like, that wasn't in the novel, and this is the first instance of that happening.
Really?
Yeah, so that's where, like, this part of vampire myth comes from.
That's wild. I had no idea.
Movie. Yeah. In the book, he, like... is uncomfortable in the daylight, but he like can parade around. I mean, he doesn't parade, but he can like go move around in the daylight. And this movie invented the death by daylight kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
So Knock senses the Count Orlok dying and cries, the master," and Hutter and Dr. Bulwer come home just as Ellen dies. And my concluding title card said, "And the truth was witnessed to the miracle that very same hour. The great death ended, and the shadow of the death bird lifted. The end."
boom.
Is that what you said at the end?
I don't remember the exact ending. But
okay.
That sounds like about right. Everything went back to normal, basically.
Okay. I have to say, there's just a couple of pieces of trivia that I thought were really interesting. Mm-hmm. One was that this whole movie was filmed on one single camera, and there was only one set of negatives. Wow. So, like, it was kind of like if it all got messed up somehow, like the whole movie would have been ruined. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a miracle that it survived. And apparently the director, who, as I mentioned, was gay, he like DIY'd a lot of this movie. Like he designed like the posters for promotion and all kinds of stuff. Like he ended up doing a lot more of the promotion for this film and the things around it, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the two of the castles that they used as locations for Orlok's castles were residences of Elizabeth Bathory, the woman who was accused of killing hundreds of women and girls and draining their blood to retain youth.
I remember that from back in the day, right from the headlines.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So I thought that was pretty wild that there was that connection, because it's mentioned that she might have been part of the inspiration for the character of Dracula in Bram Stoker's novel.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Any
other
read,
like?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I read just a couple of cute things. LOL. This is cute. LOL. The German word Orlog means war, and that's where the name Orlok came from.
Okay.
I thought that was kind of fun. Maybe not cute.
Yeah. So cute.
This is kind of a fun fact because
very demure, very mindful.
Very demure. This film is the only instance where this happens. So in the 1001 movies you must see before you die, that's a book, Nosferatu, this version, and the remake in 1979 are both included on that list, and it's the only instance where the original and the remake are both on in that.
Fascinating. Okay, I'm so curious to see the 79 version.
Yeah, so that's next. So I'm having good feelings about it already. I mean, I've kind of looked a little bit ahead and seen everything's kind of well reviewed. I haven't seen the 2024 reviews yet, but
okay. Do you have the ratings for this movie?
Yes. Okay, so IMDb 7.8.
Okay.
Tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes 97%.
Okay.
Pretty lofty. And then the audience meter to popcorn meter is 87%.
Okay. Interesting. I think I know my score. Do you have yours?
Yeah, I feel like I'm comfortable just going out and saying, and I know this probably is not going to be popular because I know this is for a different time and all of that, but maybe like a 6.8.
Oh wow. Okay. I'm giving it a 9. Like,
yeah,
I loved it.
Really higher.
Yeah, I thought it was such a fun experience to watch, and obviously it's like so different from movies that we would see today, but you can see so much of what inspired like horror films to come that I think it's pretty cool what they were able to accomplish with the budget and the technology that they had, and basically stealing a story from somewhere else and being able to turn that into this. So I'm giving it a 9.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of respect for it as a movie, and I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I think what's keeping me from a higher score is the rewatchability. Like,
oh, okay.
I wouldn't really need to watch this again.
Says the person who watched it. You watched it 3 times for this episode.
I watched it twice and like had a little bit on the background for once. And I didn't watch too intently the second time. But yeah, I mean, just because I wanted to get the full experience, not be confused. But, I wouldn't recommend someone else rewatch it. I wouldn't say everyone has to see it unless you're like a movie junkie. You know what I mean? If you're not like a film junkie, I wouldn't say you have to go see this silent film, you know?
Okay. So I think it's worth watching for sure.
Yeah, I think it's worth watching, but I don't think I'd have a strong case in convincing someone who's like, I've never seen a silent film. Do you think I'll like it? I'll be like,
Yeah. I think, if I were much more into horror and like not just like slasher films, but if I were into like true horror movies, I think that
this is a must.
Or if you are, listener, if you're really into horror movies and you've never seen this, I think it's worth watching as sort of because it is like credited as one of the foundational like horror films.
Yeah.
So I think in that respect,
I think it's well done. I just don't think it's as gripping as it could be, and I think the character of Jonathan Hutter, Thomas Hutter, is just a lot the whole time, and I was very, very confused by multiple parts of the storyline. And I feel like if you have a lot of comment cards on the screen, you could help me out and not try to make me figure out the weird word for sleepwalking instead.
So are you going to call this a beauty or a beast?
Even though I'm lower, I'm still going to call it a beauty.
Okay, same here.
Yeah, for sure.
That was really fun. I really enjoyed watching that.
Me too. I'm ready for another silent one. I'm ready for like a foreign language film too, into that.
Oh, yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
So I think one of our listeners has recommended, we have heard you recommended a foreign language film.
Is that Suspiria?
Yes, right?
I think so, yeah.
So we'll definitely be getting to that. So I'm excited for the next version of this one in 1979.
Yeah, it's kind of wild that there was such a big gap between remakes of this.
Yeah. And then the last two are going to be 1 year apart.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm excited.
Same. I can't wait to see how it all shakes out.
All right. Well, if you would like to help our podcast grow, the best thing you could do is to rate and review it on whatever podcast platform you are using to listen to our episodes.
That's right. And you're probably a really popular type, and you have a lot of friends if you're listening to us, especially if you listened to last week's episode. I'm sure they want to hear about our podcast, so tell them about it.
Yeah. Our social media is RebootyPod on Instagram, and you can email us at rebootypod@gmail.com. We love getting emails. Send us some suggestions or just a note to say hi.
That's right. And we also have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/NandMatt. You may have heard me reference The Room in this episode, and we definitely watched that and did a review of that over there, as along with a lot of other movies and games. So check it out.
Yeah. And thanks for listening to Rebooty and the Beast.
See you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.